Hello everyone! In this video I'm going to show you how I draw the sketch using a reference photo, and I always draw on a smooth Bristol paper, but all of the materials will be listed under the video. And when I sketch I also use this mechanical pencil. It's an HB, but you can also use your regular pencils like this HB or even a 2H. If you are used to drawing too dark, you can better use a lighter pencil like a 2H, because you don't want your sketch to turn out that dark, because you might be erasing quite a bit and you don't want to have too dark lines that will end up in your final drawing, because you will be shading later on and you don't want any lines in your drawing. That's just for the sketch, so make sure you sketch as light as possible. I'm going to try to sketch a bit darker so that it will be available for you to see on camera. I'm going to use this reference photo, and I usually draw from my iPad because it's bigger than my phone. You can also, if you don't have an iPad or tablet, you can also print the reference photo out, and it's easier if you print it out the same size as your drawing, so that way you can look back and forth more easily if it's the same size as what you're drawing. Now what I usually do is I make some guidelines to make it easier for myself. So I have an iPad I can draw on. If you don't have this, you can print your reference photo out and draw over it with a pencil, and you can use a ruler to make it easy, and you can draw these guidelines. If you don't want to, I will upload the reference photo with the guidelines I made, so that you can follow along with the same lines, with the same reference photo and guidelines that I'm using. So I always start with a vertical line in the middle of the face. And as you can see, I'm drawing on an iPad and it's not easy for me. It's not the same as paper. So I just use the tool that you can make a straight line like this. And so that's the line in the middle. Then I make a line under her nose. So I draw these guidelines so I know where the face features will be. So that way I can transfer it to my paper as well. So these guidelines I will also be making on my paper. I make a guideline for her eyebrows, a bit higher. And then I make a line in the middle of her eye. So I make sure it's in the middle of the pupil. I also make a vertical line from the corner of her eye. And if you go straight down, you see that it also is the line where her nose wing is. On the other side as well. And also and the outer corner of her eye on this side too. Okay, now you can what I do is I make it easier for myself. If you take the half of this space and then the half again, you get the underline of her eye. Well, not her under eyelid, but her her wrinkle. So this, it's the same. And if you look here, you take the half, and here too. You can see where her eyebrows are. And if you have the half of this and then half again, you can see where the crease begins. It's a little higher than this, but it's, and on this side too. Now you already can notice one thing. Look, her crease on this side is a bit higher because, well, because a face is never 100% symmetrical, and maybe she is squinting one eye a bit. So it's up to you if you make your eyes 100% symmetrical or if you draw this crease also a bit higher. Now for her lips, let me see, if you do half and half again, that's about where her upper lip starts. And then half and half again, that's where her underlip. You see, that's how you can easily make it easier for yourself. You can also use a grid with smaller squares, and you can copy the whole thing more accurately on your drawing, but I don't like to do that because eventually you don't want to pay attention to all these grids. You want to pay attention to her face features and recreate those. If you depend on the grid lines too much, you won't memorize it in your head to recreate the sketch without the grid lines, if you know what I mean. Because the more you practice your sketching, you won't have to depend on your guidelines as much as you needed in the beginning. So that way it's better to do it that's why it's better to practice your sketch like this instead of all of these guidelines, because you can have guidelines everywhere, but then you are just focusing on those, because you can have those a grid, so all of these squares everywhere, but then you are not focusing on her face but on every small part of the grid. It is a more accurate way to sketch using a grid, but this is how I do it. Okay, I make sure it's the same size as what I want to draw. Now I'm going to transfer these guidelines on my paper, and I start with the vertical line. And if you are not comfortable enough to make these lines, to freehand these lines, then you can use a ruler, of course. I make this movement before I draw the line, so I know. And you're not going to draw like this, but with your whole arm. You're going to move your whole arm. It makes you have more control of the line. Okay? And then I start putting the line down after I make those movements. Of course, it's difficult to draw straight lines, and if it's very difficult for you, you can practice on another piece of paper first. Just draw these quick lines, practice the hand movement, draw circles until you're satisfied with your controlled movements. Now I'm going to draw the horizontal line of her eye. It will be around here. Okay. And then I'm going to start measuring. So I measure with my pencil. You can also use a ruler for this. I just put my pencil on top of the reference photo and then on top of my drawing. And of course you can be, if you use a ruler, you can be more accurate. Now we're going from the eye line to her nose. And to her chin. And we're going to measure her eye. And the other side. This actually has to be the same size. If she's looking very straight forward. And also the width of the eye is the same width as the space between the eyes. Again, that is if the person is looking. I'm going to make it a bit lighter, this line. That is only if the person is looking straight forward. If she has her face a little bit to the left or to the right, you will get other proportions. So the width of her eye, if you look at my guidelines, the space between your eyes are a bit smaller than the width of her eye from the guideline. But I drew it because I like to draw the guideline from the corner of her eye. And you see that her eye is, if you take the same width, you see that you get this space, but I drew the guideline here. So that's why I'm going to measure it to be sure that I have the same size. Let's see if this is the same size. Now we're going to draw the vertical line down. And we're going to draw this line, so the half and half of this and half again. So half and half. And on this side as well. And here 2, half and half. And we have the crease. Okay, we have the nose, we have the chin. We can draw the side of her face. If you look closely, here she has more space than here. It's just a slight bit more. It's because her face is, instead of looking to the front, she's tilting her head a slightly bit. So I'm just going to make it more just straightforward, so that it's symmetrical. I'm just going to make it more symmetrical. I have a brush to brush away the eraser crumbs, so that if you get graphite on your hand, you will, instead of using your hand, you might get your paper dirty, so it's better to use a clean brush for that. Now I start by filling. I always start with the eyes. And now if you look here, the corner of her eye, if you take half of this part, it's a bit higher than half, but you know where to start. So half, and then here is the corner of her eye. If you have this line, you take half again. That's where her upper eyelid starts. So that's how I look for places to, well, how do you say that? I look for lines in the reference photo so that I can recreate that on my drawing, on my paper. If we have, now we have this line of her inner corner, and that's also where the iris is, and then slightly under that is her under eyelid. Before you start drawing portraits, you do want to know how to draw a single eye first. I would practice that first, so practice drawing single eyes as much as you can. Practice drawing noses from different angles. You do want to know how to draw the face features first, and how an eye is built up, like how to draw a round eye and not that it's flat. And also practice with how to draw two eyes, so that the person is not cross-eyed. You need to pay attention that the two irises are facing the same direction, and that the pupil is in the middle of the iris. That way you don't get any cross-eyed look. And you see the crease and her wrinkle under her eye. That's what makes her eye look round. So I'm just going to draw her crease a bit higher, the same as the other eye. I want to try and keep it symmetrical. And it's okay if you are a bit, it doesn't have to be 100% the same as your reference photo. You're not a copy machine. You are an artist, and it's your drawing. It's going to be your recreation from something. If you want it to be 100% the same, well then we would just use photos, right? Just do the best as you can for now and keep on going. And you know what? In the end, you make a photo of your drawing, and the next day you will make another one, or the next week you'll make another one, and after 5 or 6 or 7 drawings, you can look back at the first one and you can already see that you made progress, if you keep on drawing, that is. And if you see that progress, you can be proud of yourself, and I hope it will motivate you to keep on going. Because, well, don't put a lot of pressure on yourself. I know that artists are perfectionists. I am a perfectionist myself, and I don't like my own drawings. I don't like what I make. Well, not all of the time, but I can be very hard on myself. Like, that isn't what I had in mind. But just try to let that go and enjoy your drawing progress and enjoy your drawing process and be satisfied with what you created and try to look back on your first drawings. Because if you think, oh, I still can't get it right, or I'm still not on the right track, look back and then you will notice the difference that you are making, that you are having progress and you are getting somewhere. It's just difficult to see it from yourself. And you will also learn from yourself. You will learn from your mistakes. So if you think, oh, I'm not going to draw because I can't do it, I don't want to make any mistakes. Well, I learned from my own mistakes. You look back at, when you are finished and you look back, you say to yourself, or you think to yourself, I would do that different the next time, or I wouldn't do that, or I would change that the next time. But if you don't start drawing, then you won't be able to learn from it. So I'm just drawing the other eye. I'm looking at the lines and seeing if I can, I pay attention that I have the same sizes. I also pay attention to the lines that I see in the reference photo. And I try to recreate that. You see I have half of this, so this is you see that our corner is a bit more to the right here. Iris. I always take my time a lot while I sketch. You can do it more faster, you can take more time, you can do it however you want. I'm a real perfectionist, so I really want to make sure that I have everything, that I'm satisfied with everything before I continue. So I already can see that this eye is a bit bigger, so I'm going to erase that. It's also a real challenge for me to explain what I'm doing and drawing at the same time. Normally when I'm sketching, I just put some music on, don't think too much. And now I'm definitely thinking about it because I want to make it right. And I want to explain it the best I can for you. Okay, obviously there isn't a line here, but this is where her eyelashes will be. So that's why your sketch will look a bit funny in the beginning, because you are drawing all these lines, but in the reference photo, those are actually like shadows or highlights. You see like these lines here. These are from her nose bridge, the shadow from her nose bridge. And well, if I draw them, let me see, I look at this space here and I take half. So that's about where the shading will be. And because I drew a line now, it looks funny. Because you don't have any lines in the portrait, because her face is round, of course. Later on you will lighten these lines or shade them with the blending stump. So don't worry if your sketch is looking a bit funny in the beginning. Let me see, her eyebrow is a bit under this line. So I'm going to start drawing her eyebrow. It goes around to, it goes about here and then it goes up. The corner of her eyebrow is here. So now we go down to about half of this line. And here you have some loose hairs. We can also draw that later on. So after your sketch, and when you are shading, you can also change things. So that's why your sketch doesn't need to be too dark. Let me see, the crease, and then half of it is about where the eyebrow is. And her eyebrow is the end of her eyebrow. And you can always correct that later on. It's also handy to, wait, let me see, the half and a bit under. So I take the same line. It's always handy to make a photo of your sketch, so you can look back and see if anything is off, because when you are drawing at the moment, it's harder to see if anything is off. So it's good to take breaks, make a photo of your drawing, and a good way to also see if your eyes are correct is that you turn your photo and you look at it from the other side. So you turn it upside down, and then that way you won't look at eyes, but you will look at lines, and it's better to see it. You will look at the shapes and see if the shapes are correct. So that's also how you will look at your portrait at the moment. To recreate that, it's easier if you look at the eyes as all of these shapes, the nose too, the lips too, instead of a mouth, a nose, so what you think you see. You draw what you see and not what you think you see. It's easier that way. So with these lines, you will make these shapes in your head and recreate that. Okay, now we're going to draw the iris. So we have this, the inner eye, over here. And you see that the iris is in the middle, so the same, about the same width you have here as well as here. And then you're going to draw the circle, and the circle is under her upper eyelid. So that's how you will imagine the circle. And you will also draw it like that. Going to make this a bit higher. So this is the iris. This is where your eyelashes will be. And the other iris, same way, circle. I make the same movement, like a circle movement, and I start very lightly. If I'm satisfied where the lines are, then I go darker and darker, I go over it. Looks like this one is a slightly bigger. Okay, now because the circle is not all visible, the pupil won't be in the middle of the space you see, but it will be in the middle of the circle. So that's why you see that the pupil is a bit higher. So you imagine the whole circle, and in the middle of that circle you will have the pupil. You highlight. There usually is a highlight in the iris because of the light that's in front of her. And you want to make sure that the iris is in the middle. No, that the pupil is in the middle of the iris. You don't want it to draw it here or down here. It should be in the middle. So the eyes are the most difficult part, but once you have that, you can move on to the nose. And as I said before, you can practice drawing eyes first before you draw a whole portrait. So draw just the full page of just single eyes, two eyes. Practice as much as you can. Drawing is not only about talent, it's also practice. Well, one person can be maybe a bit more talented, and that person would only need to practice like 5 times, and maybe you would need to practice like 10 times. But if you are determined and you know what you want, then eventually you will also get there. So I don't believe it's true that one has to be talented, only talented to draw. We all need to practice. It makes me think about what I read one time, and it is that every artist was once an amateur. If you are looking at an artist and it can draw a portrait, in like 1 hour, or it can draw the artist can draw the sketch very accurately, and you think, how is he doing that? Maybe he already has 5 years of practice. So don't compare yourself as a beginner to an advanced artist. He or she was also a beginner in the beginning. So never compare yourself to anyone. Compare yourself to yourself. Like I said, if you make photos of your drawings or if you keep them somewhere, look at your own progress. Compare your first drawings to compare your older drawings to your newest drawings. That's what you need to do. Don't compare yourself to others. Now let's move on to the nose. And if I see anything later on, I can correct that if I need to. Okay, so we have the middle line of her nose. I don't know all of those names in terms of, well, her wing of her nose, her nostrils. Let me see. So it's a bit higher than the guideline, so we'll draw it here. And the reason why I like to use a mechanical pencil is I don't need to sharpen it. When you're sketching, you want to have a sharp tip to draw thinner lines. And if you need to sharpen again, well, I don't like that. So I just use a mechanical pencil for that. That's one of the reasons. And on the same line, we draw the other side of our nose. A bit too round. And her nostrils will be higher. So if you want to draw more guidelines or make it more easier for yourself, you can draw half of this, then half of this, and then half of this. That is about where the nostril will be. So if you take half of this, that's also where the nose wing stops. Well, I drew hard lines, but eventually this will be lighter, of course, because if you look at her nose, you see the shading. There aren't any lines, there are soft lines because her face is round. But for the sketch, we are drawing these lines that we're going to follow. So half, half, that's where the nostril. It's a bit higher on this side. And if you look at if you put your pencil like this, you look at the line, you see that her nostril on this side is a bit higher, you see? You can draw that the same as the reference photo, or you can make it more symmetrical. So I'm going to draw it on the same line as the other nostril. And the nostril is in the middle of this line. So that's where it goes down. And also on this side, that's how you can check. if you are still correct. And when we start shading, we can change things a bit, see if it still looks right. That's what I always do. Going to lighten this line a bit. So you want to make sure your sketch lines are lighter than mine. Well, you can also draw with an HB, but you don't want them to be darker. And I always draw with light pressure. Never draw with hard pressure. You don't want to make these marks in your paper that will be visible once you erase them. So you see these shadows here of her nose, because that's because her nose is round. So you can also draw them for the sketch, but draw them very light. And you see here the shading, that's what we will do later on. So that's her nose. Now we're going to her lips. And now we have the space of her nose and her chin. And half of that, so we're going to do the same here. And half of that again. That is where you see that it's a bit lower, so you will draw it a bit higher. So that's where the upper lip starts. And then you go half again and half again. Half, half. That's where her under lip starts. Now you want to know where the corner of her mouth is, and usually that's where the pupil is or the iris is. So you go up, you make a line, and here you can see that it's a bit in the middle of her pupil. Well, actually, let's make a line like this. You see that it's a bit more to the left of her iris. And on this side, you see that it's a bit, it's not on the same line of her iris. And that's because she was tilting her face a little bit more to the left. So I'm going to draw them on the same line of the iris, and I make a movement. I don't draw a line, but I go down, and that's where the line will be. Same for here, I go down, and that's where I will draw the corner of her mouth. So let me see, this is the guideline, this is also the guideline, this is the line from her underlip. Now you want to make the line for the middle of her lip, and that's in between these two lines. So this was the guideline, and then it's around about here. So you see that her upper lip is smaller than her upper lip is smaller than her underlip. Her lower lip. Is it underlip or lower lip? I think it's lower lip. Her upper lip and her lower lip. Now you can see that it goes, it's not straight because she's smiling a bit, so her corners are like a bit higher. So we will go a bit higher, like here, and draw the line. And on the same height, we are also going to draw the other. line like this. Now we can erase these guidelines. And if I look back at my drawing and I think, oh, my lips should need to be a bit wider. No, I think they are right. Then I can correct that later on. Now let me see, we draw her upper lip, and it goes a bit, curls a bit down and then up. So down and a bit up. And on the other side, and then we connect them. So you have a thick shadow under her lower lip. But that's something we will do with the shading. So now, because you have these lines, it really looks strange next to your reference photo. But you will correct that with the shading. And well, her eyes look also strange because she has these beautiful eyelashes. And oh, I see that I haven't drawn this. Under her eye. And up. And this also isn't a line, these are shadows. So I'm going to draw her eyelashes later on. So you can see her eyelash goes really more, she has really long eyelashes, and on this side as well. So that's what will make her eyes pop in the end and look more like eyes. I'm actually going to correct this. This should be a bit higher. Let's see. Now, here's the chin, and we can actually draw her jawline. You can see that it goes down and then this way. Bit straight here and then more round over here. And on the other side the same. You can also measure it if you're not comfortable enough with freehanding. Let's see. So this should be a bit more. Let's actually erase this guideline already. And this one. Her ears are on the same line of, well, let's see, if you take half of this, so her under, well, her wrinkle or end of her nose, it's about on that same line. And the top of her ears are a bit under her eyebrow. But I'm not going to draw her full face. Let's see. So if we go from her eyebrow, from the line of her eyebrow, let's see, that's right about here. Let's erase this already. I'm actually wiping away with my hands. So this is where her hairline is. And I think her hair is tied. We can't see it because of the dark background. But if you will draw the hair, it would be somewhere over here. But I'm just going to focus on her face for now, for this portrait. It actually looks like this should be a bit higher, so let's see from her eyebrows. No, it's actually correct, like this. So if you think something is off, you can measure with your pencil and just see if you have it correct. And well, once we start the shading process, we can always correct if we need to. For now, I'm erasing the guidelines. And then we'll go from there. Then we'll start the shading. For me, that is the most fun part. So erase the guidelines, you don't need them anymore. I'm actually going to use my pencil eraser for these smaller areas. But if you're using a smaller eraser, the one I'm using is quite big, So it's more easier to erase these smaller, around these smaller parts. It's okay if you see it. Well, try to erase the guidelines as much as you can. And if you see them a little bit, it's okay because you will shade over it. So that's okay. So the eyebrows, more hairs, but we will do that later well, after the shading actually. I forgot to draw the neck, and I want to add it to the sketch before I start shading. So if you look at these guidelines here, from the corner of her eye, you see that the neck line is right about there. And this jawline, I want to make it a bit more straight. Actually goes a bit more inward. And on this side, and you see these, from her cheekbones, you see these shaded lines. That's what we will be shading later on. I'm drawing it to make her face look less round. Okay, now I think the sketch is done. And next we will start the shading.